The coffee was still hot when I poured it that morning, and for a few seconds I stood in the kitchen with both hands wrapped around the mug, as if warmth alone could persuade the day to remain ordinary. Steam lifted in thin, pale ribbons, slipping upward through the weak light that came through the window above the sink, and beyond the glass I watched my wife Melissa load the last of her luggage into the back of her white SUV with the careful efficiency of a person who had rehearsed every movement before performing it. The driveway was damp from an early mist, the maple tree at the curb dripping slowly onto the concrete, and the whole cul-de-sac had that washed grey silence Tacoma sometimes carries in the morning before traffic wakes up and neighbors begin opening garage doors. Melissa did not look tired. That was the first thought I remember having, though I did not know then why it mattered. She had spent weeks telling me how exhausted she was, how depleted, how completely emptied out by this house and its routines and the emotional weight of everything here. But as she lifted the final suitcase and fitted it neatly beside the others, she moved with the bright precision of someone leaving behind a problem she expected never to face again. Her wellness retreat in Napa had been planned like a military extraction. Color-coded packing lists lay in a folder on the counter. Confirmation emails had been printed and placed in order by date. The hotel number, the retreat coordinator, the spa itinerary, the private driver, the emergency contact sheet. All of it had been stacked beside the fruit bowl, as if she were making sure I understood how much effort had gone into her escape. The night before, I had stood in the doorway of our bedroom while she rolled silk blouses into packing cubes, and I had said, because silence had become unbearable, 2 weeks is not that long. She did not turn around immediately. She smoothed the edge of a sweater, pressed it flat, then looked at me in the mirror with that careful smile she had developed over the years, the one that showed her teeth but did not allow anything human to reach her eyes. "You have no idea how exhausting it has been dealing with everything here," she said. "Everything here. Not Aaron, not our son, not the boy whose accident had changed every wall and hallway in our home. Everything." That was what she called him now when she was not being watched. A burden without a name, a category, an arrangement, a problem contained upstairs in a hospital bed. I remember feeling the old reflex rise in me. The need to object, to correct the language, to say his name out loud until she remembered he was not a spreadsheet item. But I had learned long ago that pushing back against Melissa did not produce conversation. It produced weather. A cold pressure would enter the house and stay there for days. Doors would close more softly than slams. Meals would become silent. Medication times would be handled with clipped professionalism. Aaron would look from her face to mine and become smaller in his chair. So I said nothing. I nodded, rinsed my cup, and let the sentence die exactly where she wanted it to die. That morning, her engine turned over at 7:12. She had not come back into the house to say goodbye. No kiss on my cheek, no hand on Aaron's door, no reminder spoken with tenderness. She simply started the SUV, checked the mirrors, backed out of the driveway a little too fast, the rear tire brushing the curb as she swung toward the street. And then she was moving away from the house with her luggage, her printed confirmations, and 14 days of distance from us. I stayed at the sink longer than necessary, mug in hand, watching until the vehicle disappeared around the corner. 14 days, I thought. Just me and Aaron. No medication schedules taped to the refrigerator in Melissa's narrow, commanding handwriting. No spreadsheets across the dining table showing appointments, refill dates, therapy cycles, insurance calls, and costs broken into columns that made our son's body look like a budget problem. No quiet corrections when I asked what time Aaron's afternoon dose was due. No small sighs when I reached for the wrong bottle. No reminders that she had everything under control, that I meant well but became emotional, that Aaron needed consistency, that the doctors knew what they were doing, that she knew what they had said because she had been listening while I had been processing. I took a sip of coffee. It tasted slightly bitter, metallic at the back of my tongue, and I thought I had measured the grounds wrong, though I had made coffee the same way for 20 years. Upstairs, the house remained still. Aaron was supposed to be asleep. His hospital bed, with its rails and faint motor, sat against the wall in the room that had once been full of model airplanes, comic books, and a messy desk where he built small machines out of discarded electronics. The wheelchair by that desk had cost more than my first car. The bathroom remodel had taken 6 weeks, a second mortgage's worth of money, and more arguments than I could count. The doctors had told us the spinal cord injury was permanent after the car accident 5 years earlier. They had said incomplete did not mean recoverable, that we should adjust expectations, that adaptation mattered more than hope. I had listened. Melissa had listened harder. She had become the keeper of all information, all pills, all medical language, all doors between Erin and the world. For 5 years, I watched my son try to move legs that would not answer. For 5 years, Melissa handled every prescription, every specialist, every therapy note, every dosage, every refill, every question I was made to feel foolish for asking. I was rinsing the mug when I heard footsteps, not the uneven dragging sound I had memorized from early therapy sessions, not the squeak of brakes on the wheelchair wheels, not the thud of something dropped from the bedside table, not the muffled call of my name. Footsteps, steady, weight-bearing, careful but unassisted, coming down the stairs. The mug slipped from my hand before my mind had agreed to release it. It hit the tile and shattered, coffee splashing across my shoes and the cabinet base in a dark fan. I turned slowly, my body resisting what my ears had already told me. Erin stood at the bottom of the staircase upright, balanced, breathing fast but steady. He wore grey sweatpants and a dark hoodie, the hood pushed back from his pale face. His hair was flattened on one side from sleep, and his eyes were wide, not with surprise, but with the fierce alertness of someone who had been awake long before he stepped into view. He was not leaning against the railing. He was not bracing himself against the wall. He was standing. For a second, my mind refused him. It offered explanations, like a desperate clerk pulling files from the wrong drawer. A brace hidden under the clothes. A therapy breakthrough Melissa had not told me about. A dream, a seizure, a miracle. Then he walked toward me, not smoothly, not like a boy who had never been injured, but walking. His feet placed carefully, his shoulders controlled, his balance trained, his eyes fixed on mine. "Dad," he said quietly, and there was something in his voice I had not heard in years, something older than 13 and younger than fear. "We need to leave right now." I stared at him while the broken mug lay in pieces between us, and the steam from the spilled coffee faded against the cold tile. "Erin," I said, but it came out like a question with no shape. "What?" He stepped closer and grabbed my wrist. His grip was firm, stronger than I remembered, and that strength frightened me more than the walking. "There is no time," he said. "She thinks I am still asleep. They are coming, they." The word did not land in my ears. It settled in my chest, deep and heavy, like a stone dropped into water too dark to see through. "Who is coming?" I asked. Erin looked toward the front door, then toward the kitchen window, then back to me. His face was pale but focused, not panicked, focused. "She said they would arrive after she left." My first instinct was disbelief, but even disbelief was slow because the evidence of the impossible stood in front of me breathing. "Erin, what are you talking about?" His mouth tightened. "I have been pretending," he said. "For 3 years." My thoughts splintered. Pretending what? He held my eyes. "That I could not walk." Outside, an engine turned onto our street. It was not a neighbor's sedan or Mrs. Whitcomb's old pickup. It sounded heavier, lower, moving with a deliberate crawl. Erin's fingers tightened around my wrist. "Please," he said, and his voice cracked for the first time. "Just trust me. Get your keys." I cannot explain why I did. Maybe because he was standing. Maybe because something in me had been waiting for the house to reveal the truth behind its coldness. Maybe because a father sometimes recognizes danger in his child's face before understanding the fact. I did not argue. I did not demand proof. I did not ask whether Melissa knew. I stepped around the broken mug, grabbed my keys from the small ceramic dish by the door, and waited for him to tell me what came next. The engine outside idled for a few seconds too long. Erin did not hesitate. "Garage only," he said. "Do not open the front door." He moved past me toward the interior garage door, still upright, still steady, no wheelchair, no braces, no miracle explanation I could hold. I followed him with my keys in my hand, and my heart working harder than usual, not racing wildly, but pounding with a slow, dangerous pressure. At the garage door he stopped and listened. That was when something inside me shifted. Not into panic. Panic is for people who still believe reality will return to normal if they refuse the abnormal hard enough. What came over me then was colder. Clarity. Procedure. I pressed the garage remote. The door began to rise. It felt slower than it had ever felt, groaning upward inch by inch while the morning light widened across the concrete. A dark van rolled past the end of the driveway. It did not stop. It did not park. It drifted by with the calm of a vehicle, confirming a location. Erin stood just behind the passenger side of my car, eyes locked on it. "They will circle," he said. "Who are they?" I asked, keeping my voice low because the open garage felt like a mouth exposing us to the street. He glanced at me, and for a moment I saw the boy under the hard surface, the child who used to ask me to check under his bed after thunderstorms. "Mom's friends," he said. Then after a small pause, "Grandma's friends. My mother-in-law lived 3 states away in Oregon. She rarely visited. When she did, she stayed in hotels and corrected the way our towels were folded." I got into the car. Aaron moved around to the passenger side without help. The small act of him opening his own door almost stopped me more than the danger did. I backed out calmly. No screeching tires, no sudden movement. The van reached the corner and disappeared. We drove 2 blocks in silence. Then Aaron said, "Take the next right. Then go toward the old marina." He was not guessing. He was directing. I followed. The marina parking lot was mostly empty that early, just a few fishermen unloading gear, a man in rubber boots carrying a cooler, gulls crying overhead, the smell of salt and diesel mixing with the damp morning air. I parked near the far edge, facing the water with enough space to see anyone approaching. For a few seconds, I listened to the engine tick as it cooled. Then I turned to my son. "Start talking." Aaron took one breath, held it, released it. He did not cry. That frightened me too. A child in danger should cry. A child who has lived with danger too long learns to organize. "I started getting better about 3 years ago," he said. "My legs. At first it was nothing big, a twitch. Then I could move my toes. Then I could tighten my thigh if I concentrated. I thought it was therapy working. I thought maybe the doctors had been wrong or I was just lucky." My throat tightened so hard I had to swallow before I could speak, but I stayed quiet because if I interrupted him, I was afraid the whole impossible structure of the morning would collapse. I told Mom. His gaze dropped to his hands. She did not smile. She did not call the doctor. She did not say we should celebrate or test anything. She stared at me for a long time and told me sometimes nerves misfire and imagination can feel like movement. Then my medication changed. The breeze moved across the windshield. Somewhere a boat motor coughed alive. "What do you mean changed?" I asked. "Different pills. More pills." I started feeling weak again. Dizzy. My hands shook. My legs stopped responding the same way. She said it was because I was overexerting. She told you I was having spasms. She told the therapist I was emotionally unstable because I kept insisting I could feel things. He reached into the pocket of his hoodie and pulled out a small plastic bag. Inside were crushed tablets, capsules, fragments of pills sorted into smaller envelopes. One night I did not swallow them. I hid them under my tongue, waited until she left, and spit them into tissues. The next day I felt stronger, so I did it again. Then I took them for 2 days and got worse. Then I skipped again and got better. He handed me the bag. My hand did not want to accept it. "Aaron," I whispered, "you are saying she was drugging you." "I am saying I tested it," he replied, calmly, terribly. "I am saying every time I stopped taking the pills she gave me, I could move more. Every time I took them, I lost ground." The marina seemed too open now, too exposed. Ordinary people moved in the distance, laughing about bait and weather, while my son placed years of horror between us on the center console. "Why did you not tell me?" I asked. I hated the question as soon as it left me, because I heard the accusation inside it. The desperate father asking the injured child to explain his own isolation. Aaron's jaw tightened. "Because I was not sure at first," he said. "And when I was sure, I was 10. Who would believe a 10-year-old who suddenly says his mom is poisoning him, especially when everyone thinks he is disabled and traumatized?" He looked at me then, not cruelly, but directly. "And she watches you." The words slid under my skin. "What does that mean? Your phone, your email, the mail before you see it. She handles your vitamins, your refills. She makes your coffee every morning." The taste of bitterness at the back of my tongue returned so vividly that I almost gagged. I had been tired for years. Foggy, heavy, forgetful in small ways. I had blamed age, work, caregiver, burnout, grief. Melissa had smiled patiently when I lost track of conversations and said, "You have been under so much stress." I had believed her because believing exhaustion was easier than suspecting design. "I do not handle your medication," I said, and my own voice sounded distant. Aaron nodded. "I know. He reached down and pulled a thin black folder from the backpack at his feet. I had not noticed the backpack when we left. Of course he had packed one. Of course he had planned. He opened it on his lap. Printed emails, screenshots, bank statements, insurance forms, handwritten notes with dates. I have been collecting things, he said, for years. The first page he handed me was an insurance policy in my name, the coverage amount larger than anything I remembered discussing. Beneficiary, Melissa Carter Hayes. The second was Aaron's policy. Beneficiary, Melissa Carter Hayes. The third was a home equity line of credit application bearing my signature. It looked like mine. The slant, the loop in the D, the pressure. I had no memory of signing it. I flipped another page. A copy of a notarized authorization allowing Melissa expanded access to certain accounts. My signature again. My stomach hollowed out. I signed these, maybe, Aaron said. Maybe you signed blank forms when she said they were medical or school related. Maybe she copied your signature. I do not know. He had learned to leave room for evidence. That devastated me more than if he had simply accused. And the van, I asked. Aaron looked toward the marina entrance. Contractors for what? He looked back at the water. House fires, the gulls cried overhead. The marina ropes tapped softly against metal poles. I heard her on the phone last week, he said. She thought I was asleep. She said they will both be asleep. Make it plain. Then she said today was better because she would be gone. He did not dramatize it. He repeated it like testimony. In that moment, I expected rage. I expected some ancient male instinct to roar awake, to drive back to the house, to confront Melissa, to grab her by the shoulders and demand what kind of mother poisons her own child. Instead, I felt something far stranger. A procedure, a narrowing of the world into steps. If this was true, emotion could get us killed. If it was false, panic could destroy what remained of our family. Either way, I needed verification. Do you have recordings? I asked. Aaron nodded. Multiple, show me. He opened a laptop from the backpack, set it carefully on the center console, adjusted the brightness, and connected a small external drive. His folder structure was meticulous. Audio, video, medication, insurance, property, mother calls, grandmother, unknown numbers. I stared at the labels. My 13-year-old son had built a case file while pretending not to be able to stand. Audio first, he said. He clicked. Melissa's voice filled the car, clear enough that my whole body recognized it before my mind accepted the content. No, he does not notice anymore. He is tired most of the time. It is easier that way. A man's voice answered lower, measured. And the boy, a pause. Then Melissa, not angry, not frightened, not grieving. Administrative. He will not be an issue. Aaron let the file end. He did not look at me. He gave me the dignity of hearing my wife discuss my sedation and my child's disposal without having to perform a reaction. He clicked another file. Melissa again. It is simpler if I am out of town. I do not want to deal with questions afterward. The male voice, we need access. Melissa, side door. After he makes coffee, he will be slow. Aaron will be upstairs. The recording ended. I closed my eyes for 1 second, then opened them because darkness felt unsafe. Where did you get these? My phone. I leave it recording when she talks in the kitchen. She thinks I sleep late. He opened screenshots next. Text messages from unknown numbers. Short confirmations. Dates. Times. One from 3 nights earlier. After you leave. Morning window. Melissa's reply. Understood. I inhaled slowly. Medication proof. Aaron handed me labeled envelopes. Every refill that seemed wrong. Every pill I could hide. I looked up codes online. Some match prescriptions. Some do not. Then he handed me one of my own pill bottles. The label was correct. The pills inside were the wrong color. I leaned back in the driver's seat and looked at my son. Not the boy I thought I had been caring for, but the child who had been caring for us both in secret. You have been doing this alone, I said. Yes, no pride, no self-pity. Flagged. I looked toward the marina entrance. The van had not followed us, but absence did not mean safety. Okay, I said. Aaron watched me. Here is what we are not going to do. We are not going back to the house. We are not confronting her. We are not calling anyone she might have already prepared. We are going to secure the evidence, verify independently, and move through channels she cannot control. Aaron nodded once. I have backups. How many? 3 digital. 1 off-site. 1 cloud under a name she does not know. 1 physical drive taped under the bottom drawer of my desk. I stared at him. Of course you do. The corner of his mouth twitched, not a smile but the memory of one. I had time, independent toxicology. There is a private lab in Olympia. Cash accepted. I called using a burner app. Outside law enforcement, he looked at me carefully. He knew what I meant. Melissa's mother had relatives in county government. A judge, a retired detective, a network of polite older people who collected favors the way others collected china. I had dismissed that network as family gossip for years. Now it looked like infrastructure. Federal, Aaron said. If the fire crosses insurance fraud and state lines. I stared at him again. You research jurisdiction. I had time, he repeated. Then he handed me another page, a life insurance document from years before I met Melissa. Her first husband, Daniel Reeves. Cause of death, accidental house fire. Eugene, Oregon. 7 years before our marriage. I felt the air leave my chest. She told me she had never been married. I know, Aaron said. She scrubbed most of it. Grandma helped. He watched me carefully, measuring how much more I could take. Children should not have to ration truth to protect their parents from collapse. Anything else? I asked. He hesitated. Live cameras. He turned the laptop toward me and opened a feed. Our house appeared on screen. Driveway, side yard, back patio. The timestamp ran in the corner. 3 men stood near the garage. 1 wore a dark cap. 1 carried a small black case. 1 had work gloves already pulled tight. I felt my pulse slow. It did not race. It slowed, as if my body understood that terror now had a shape and could be documented. 1 man moved toward the side door. Start recording, I said. Already recording, Aaron replied. Red indicators blinked on the screen. Backup upload active. The man at the side door tested the handle, then opened it. Not forced. Unlocked. Melissa had left it for them. The 3 men entered my house with no rush and no hesitation. I watched strangers move through my kitchen, past the broken mug I had not cleaned, past the sink where I had stood minutes earlier. They did not search for us. They did not call out. They walked like contractors inspecting a job site. 1 moved to the basement door. Another crossed into the living room. The 3rd checked the hallway. Aaron switched camera views. Basement. The man with the black case knelt by the breaker panel. I spent 22 years designing architectural systems. Before moving into project management, I knew enough about electrical infrastructure to understand what I was seeing. Not a repair, not theft, a controlled ignition setup made to look like a plausible electrical failure. My house, my sleeping son's room, my coffee mug cooling in pieces on the tile, all of it being arranged into a future report. Fire accidental, husband and disabled child asleep, wife away in Napa. Tragic, clean, profitable. License plate, I said. Aaron switched to driveway feed, froze the van, zoomed, captured the plate. Send it to yourself and me. Then export the clip. He did. The man in the basement adjusted a timer. Another placed something behind the living room couch. The hallway camera caught the 3rd man pausing near Aaron's bedroom door. He opened it and looked inside at the hospital bed and the wheelchair. He said something, and though the audio was muffled, we heard laughter. That was when anger finally touched me, hot and brief. But I did not let it steer. I found Michael Tours in my contacts. College friend, federal fire investigations, Christmas cards, occasional emails, nothing intimate for years. But old trust sometimes remains like a buried line. I dialed. He answered on the 3rd ring. Daniel, everything okay? No, I said. I need you to listen without interrupting. I gave him facts. Active intrusion, ignition devices, insurance policies, prior husband dead in a house fire, recordings, plate number, live fade, suspected drugging of minor and adult, evidence preserved. I kept my voice steady because people believe steady. When I finished, Michael did not speak for a moment. Then he said, stay where you are. Do not go back. Send me everything. I am looping in ATF and FBI out of Seattle. This just crossed several lines. I gave him the location. Aaron began exporting files. On screen, the men exited through the side door. The van pulled away. At 10:17, the basement camera flashed a small spark. Smoke began thin, gray, almost delicate. It crawled along a beam. "Fire department," Aaron said. "Now," I replied. I called 911 and reported an active structure fire at my address. I did not say arson. Not yet. The operator confirmed dispatch. We watched smoke thicken. Flames appeared, controlled at first, licking along the planned path. I felt strangely detached. That house had held our life for 7 years. Now it was evidence burning in real time. Sirens arrived on the camera feed. Fire trucks turned onto the street. Neighbors gathered in robes and jackets, hands over mouths, phones raised. The firefighters moved quickly. Hose lines, axes, commands. Smoke pushed from windows that had looked out on birthday parties and therapy vans and Melissa's carefully arranged flower bed. Aaron closed the laptop halfway, not enough to stop recording, enough to reduce the image. "They will call Mom," he said. "They already have," I replied. My phone rang before the sentence finished. "Melissa." I let it ring twice before answering. "Hello." Her breathing was slightly uneven, but not enough for panic. "Daniel, the fire department just called me." "What happened? Are you home? Is Aaron okay?" Concern arranged carefully. "We are safe," I said. A pause. "Where are you?" "At the marina." Another pause, longer. "Why would you be at the marina?" "Fresh air." Aaron watched my face. "You did not tell me you were leaving the house," she said softly. "You did not tell me you were sending contractors," I replied. Silence, not confusion, calculation. "I do not know what you are implying." "I am not implying." I looked at the water. "I am stating," her tone firmed. "This is not the time for accusations. There is a fire at our home. You are right. It is the time for documentation." Another pause. Longer. I could almost hear her mind moving, opening doors, closing doors, searching for the version of me she could still control. "Daniel," she said, gentler now, "you sound tired. You have not been sleeping well." Once that sentence would have destabilized me. It was one of her keys. Concern sharpened into doubt. "I will not be returning to the house," I said, "and neither will Aaron." "You are being irrational." "No, I am being procedural." Her breath shifted. "Aaron needs stability. He needs routine." Aaron's eyes hardened. "Aaron is standing next to me," I said. The silence that followed was the first honest thing she had given me in years. "I am sorry, he is standing next to me. On his own, nothing, no gasp, no joy, no how, no miracle." "I do not understand," she said carefully. "You do not need to." My voice remained flat. "We have recordings, Melissa." "Recordings of what?" "Everything." That was enough. She did not ask what everything meant, as she knew. "Whatever you think you have," she said slowly, "you are misunderstanding." "I do not misunderstand ignition devices." The word ignition changed the air between us. She did not ask what devices. She did not ask where. She did not ask why I would think such a thing. She went very quiet. Then she spoke in a voice I had never heard before, lower, stripped of softness. "This is dangerous territory." "Yes," I said. "For you." Another silence. Then the mask dropped completely. "You should have stayed out of it." I looked at Aaron. "I am exactly where I need to be. You do not know who you are dealing with." "I do now." I ended the call. Within 30 minutes, 2 unmarked vehicles pulled into the marina lot. 3 agents approached calmly. No dramatic urgency, no sirens, no drawn weapons. Professionals do not spend adrenaline before they need it. One introduced himself, asked for the laptop, the drive, the physical samples, and the pill bottles. Aaron handed them over with both hands. The agent glanced through the labeled envelopes, then looked at my son with a respect adults rarely give children. "You kept records?" "Yes," Aaron said. "Good," the agent replied. That one word did something to Aaron's face. Not relief exactly. Recognition. The next 48 hours moved quietly and quickly. We did not return to the neighborhood. Federal investigators sealed the property by nightfall. By morning, the side door was covered in evidence tape. The van was identified through traffic cameras 2 exits south. Michael called twice. Accelerant residue confirmed. Timed ignition devices recovered. Setup designed to mimic electrical failure, but rushed and sloppy in ways the men probably thought would not matter, because the dead do not contest reports. The contractors had histories in construction, restoration and insurance repair work. People who could enter homes without suspicion. People who knew how fire moves. By evening, warrants were signed federally, not locally. That distinction became the first breath of safety. Erin and I sat in a beige conference room at the Seattle field office the next morning. The coffee was terrible, the fluorescent lights made everyone look ill, and somehow that plainness kept me from breaking. Agents placed transcripts across the table, timestamps, metadata, audio authentication, text records, financial documents, insurance policies, toxicology requests. The pill samples went into evidence bags. A toxicologist spoke evenly about benzodiazepines, lithium traces, sedative load, long-term cognitive dulling, neuromuscular suppression in a recovering spinal injury patient. My blood work, drawn at an urgent care under federal instruction, showed exposure patterns consistent with chronic tampering. Erin's samples showed fluctuations that matched his secret noncompliance. Words became rows. Rows became timeline. Timeline became intent. Marriage to Daniel Reeves. Policy. House fire. Insurance payout. Relocation. Marriage to me. Erin's accident. Increased control over medication. New policies. Home equity access. Sedation. Planned fire. Once events were placed in sequence, emotion became unnecessary. The pattern did the speaking. Melissa was detained at the airport returning from Napa. I was not there. I did not need to see her face when federal agents approached. Her mother was taken into custody in Oregon the same afternoon after financial records tied her to prior beneficiary transfers and communications with 2 of the contractors. By the end of the week, 3 men were charged with conspiracy to commit arson and attempted homicide. Melissa's charges expanded from insurance fraud and conspiracy to controlled substance tampering, attempted murder, and related federal counts. Her first husband's case was reopened. Then another fire connected to a relative. Then another. The horror widened not with screams, but with paperwork. Archived reports, old lab results, payout records, witness interviews with people who had once accepted grief as explanation. Erin gave a recorded statement in a controlled room with a glass of water in front of him and me behind the glass, where he could not see how tightly my hands were clasped. He spoke calmly. When he first moved his toes, when Melissa dismissed it, when the pills changed, when he began hiding them, when he pretended, when he built strength at night by holding the bed rail and standing in the dark for 5 seconds, then 10, then 30, when he fell and bit his arm to keep from making noise, when he learned to walk the length of his room while the house slept, when he installed cameras using parts from old devices, because he could not trust anyone. When he heard the call, when he decided that if he moved too soon, she would adapt, and if he waited too long, we would die. No 13-year-old should ever understand timing like that. No child should know that survival depends on letting a parent believe she has succeeded in destroying him. Melissa's attorney requested plea discussions early. The evidence was too clean. The recordings were authenticated. The digital trail remained intact. The chemical analysis established harm. The fire scene confirmed intent. Her silence after hearing Erin could stand became its own kind of testimony, though not in the formal legal sense. She accepted a plea to avoid a full public trial. Multiple counts, federal time. Her mother refused to plead, went to trial and lost. I did not attend the sentencing hearings. I received transcripts, life-changing numbers written in plain language. Years, terms, restitution, asset forfeiture. Erin read half a page of Melissa's transcript, closed the envelope and said, "Enough." He was right. People imagine justice as a door slamming. For us, it was more like a long corridor of forms. Insurance payouts frozen, assets seized, medical records corrected, accounts closed, passwords changed, shared structures dismantled. The burned house became part of a restitution pool. We did not fight for every dollar. There are seasons when survival requires refusing to make money the final battlefield. We rented a small apartment near the water with minimal furniture and locks I installed myself. No hospital bed, no medication schedule on the refrigerator, no spreadsheet in Melissa's handwriting. Erin began physical therapy by choice. His recovery had been slowed, not erased. Muscles returned reluctantly. Balance improved. Pain surfaced in places he had not used for years. He worked without complaint until the therapist told him complaint was allowed. The wheelchair was donated quietly to a clinic. The first morning he left for school under his own power, wearing a backpack over both shoulders. I stood at the kitchen sink and gripped the counter until he was gone because grief and gratitude had collided too hard to separate. The fog in my own mind lifted slowly, not in one cinematic moment. There was no morning when I woke fully restored. Instead, small things returned. Names, dates, the ability to read 3 pages without losing the thread, the taste of coffee without bitterness, sleep that reached deeper than exhaustion. With clarity came shame, and shame was harder to survive than anger. How had I not seen it? How had I let Aaron carry this alone? How many times had he looked at me waiting for me to notice? In therapy, I said those sentences until they lost some of their poison. The therapist, a woman with silver hair and a voice that did not flinch, said, "A manipulated mind does not have access to all its tools. Responsibility belongs to the person who removed them." I wanted to believe her. Some days I do. Some days I still see Aaron at 10 years old pretending weakness because the adults around him had become unsafe, and belief feels like something I have not earned. 2 years later, our mornings look ordinary, and that ordinariness is the closest thing to mercy I know. I wake before Aaron most days. I make coffee myself. I measure the ground slowly and watch the steam rise without thinking about chemistry, labels, capsules, or who touched what before me. Some mornings I still pour the first cup down the sink for no reason, except that my hand decides it does not trust what my mind knows is safe. Aaron notices but does not comment. He is 15 now, tall, lean, sarcastic in the normal teenage way that makes me absurdly grateful. He plays basketball after school, complains about algebra, leaves his shoes by the door no matter how many times I remind him, and eats cereal directly from the box when he thinks I am not looking. We moved south about a year after the case ended. A smaller city, warmer weather, no shared history in grocery aisles, no neighbors who whisper with good intentions, a house near the shoreline with windows that open easily, and no room designed around injury. We keep rules. Medication stays in original packaging. Financial statements are reviewed monthly. Passwords rotate. Visitors are not given keys. Coffee is made by the person drinking it. These rules are not fear, though fear built them. Now they are structure, and structure gives peace. On weekends, we walk along a wooden pier near our house. The boards creak when the tide shifts. Sometimes Aaron talks about coding, basketball, college, or a cybersecurity system he wants to build someday. Legal ones, he always adds, because humor has become one of the ways we touch the wound without reopening it. Sometimes we stand in silence and watch the water fold light into itself. Trust rebuilds like that, not with speeches, with a father handing car keys to a boy going to a friend's birthday party 2 towns over, with a son texting when he arrives, not because he is controlled, but because he understands fear and does not want it to guess, with coffee left unattended on a table and nobody watching it as evidence, with doors closing and opening normally. I do not think about Melissa every day anymore. That may sound impossible, but hatred is a form of attachment, and I grew tired of giving her energy. Legal updates arrive occasionally. I read them, file them, move on. I do not visit. I do not write. I do not search her name. Aaron never calls her mom now. He rarely calls her anything. In therapy, he once said, "The woman who raised me tried to make me a corpse before I became inconvenient." Then he apologized for saying it so plainly. The therapist told him plain truth is not cruelty. I have remembered that. Sometimes people ask how I survived the discovery. They expect me to mention courage, instinct, the law, federal agents, evidence. The truth is more fragile. I survived because when my son walked down the stairs and told me to trust him, I did. Late perhaps, imperfectly, without understanding, but I did. That single act did not erase the years I missed. It did not make me the father I wish I had been sooner. It simply kept us alive long enough to become something after the truth. Tonight the house is quiet. Aaron is upstairs finishing homework with music playing too loudly through one earbud. There is tea cooling beside my hand. My phone is face down on the table. The windows are open and the air smells like salt. No hum of medical equipment, no pill organizer, no printed schedule, no voice from another room telling me I am tired, confused, emotional, mistaken. Just the ordinary sounds of a life rebuilt from evidence, ash, and caution. I used to think peace would feel warm. Sometimes it does. More often it feels precise. A locked door, a labeled bottle, a bank statement reviewed, a child laughing upstairs with both feet on the floor. We survived, but survival is not restoration. The house burned. The marriage was never what I thought it was. My son lost years of his body to a woman who understood love only as access and control. I lost the comfort of believing danger announces itself. Nothing about that heals cleanly. But the tea is mine. The coffee is mine. The silence is ours. And when footsteps cross the ceiling above me now, steady and alive, I listen until they pass, not because I am afraid, but because I know exactly what a miracle sounds like when it refuses to call itself one. Before Melissa left for Napa, there had been months of small rehearsals I failed to recognize because each one arrived disguised as care. She had always been organized, but after Erin's accident, her organization sharpened into something almost sacred in the house. Clipboards appeared, then binders, then laminated schedules. She taped a chart to the inside of the pantry door and another to the refrigerator, where Erin's life was divided into columns of feeding times, medication windows, therapy assignments, hydration targets, bowel routines, sleep logs, pain observations, emotional notes, and insurance references. At first I found comfort in it, because grief and injury create such chaos that any structure feels like mercy. I told myself Melissa was coping by controlling what could be controlled. I told myself I was lucky she had the stamina for details I found overwhelming. Doctors praised her preparedness. Therapists said Erin benefited from consistency. Nurses said she was one of the most informed mothers they had ever worked with. Every compliment became another layer of authority around her. When I asked whether Erin needed so many medications, she would look at me with tired disappointment and say, "Daniel, please do not undermine the care plan because you are emotional." If I asked which doctor prescribed which pill, she would point to a binder and say, "It is all there if you can focus long enough to read it." When I tried, the pages seemed to swim. I would get through one medication name and lose the thread by the second. She would find me sitting at the table, rubbing my eyes, and soften her voice just enough to make the humiliation feel like my fault. "You see why I handle this," she would say. "You are exhausted. I do not blame you. But Erin cannot afford mistakes." Over time, I stopped asking in front of her. Then I stopped asking myself. Erin's world narrowed, first physically, then socially, then psychologically. After the accident, friends visited. Kids from school came with cards, awkward jokes, video games, too much energy for a room full of medical equipment. Melissa received them graciously for the first few months. She made lemonade, thanked parents, posted photos about community and resilience. But gradually, the visits became difficult to schedule. Erin was tired. Erin had therapy. Erin was overstimulated. Erin needed emotional stability. One boy named Caleb came 3 Saturdays in a row and was turned away twice. The third time he stopped coming. Melissa told Erin, "People have their own lives. You need to learn not to depend on outside stimulation." I remember Erin looking at the window after that, expression blank, the game controller loose in his hands. I wanted to call Caleb's parents. Melissa said that would be humiliating for Erin. I let it go. That phrase, "I let it go," could be carved over whole years of my life. There were times Erin tried to tell me something before he had proof. I see them now, sharp and unbearable. Once when he was 11, I came into his room after work and found him sitting stiffly in bed, his dinner untouched. "Dad," he said, "do you ever think Mom wants me to stay like this?" I remember freezing, not because the idea was impossible, but because it opened a door my mind refused to enter. "She is tired," I said. "We all are." He looked away. "That is not what I asked." I sat on the edge of his bed and said something useless about how trauma makes everyone say things they do not mean. He nodded, but he did not look at me again that night. Another time, he asked whether medications could make muscles weaker. I said some could, probably, but his doctors knew what they were doing. "Mom talks to them without me," he said. "She says I get confused." I told him we could ask at the next appointment. At the next appointment, Melissa sat beside him with her hand on his shoulder, answered before he finished questions, and told the specialist he had been obsessing over recovery fantasies again. The doctor, a man who looked at screens more than faces, adjusted the dosage and said psychological acceptance was part of rehabilitation. Erin did not ask again where I could hear him. Melissa's mother, Evelyn, floated around the edges of our life like a smell you could not locate, but never fully escape. She lived in Oregon, but her influence traveled through phone calls, packages, comments, and money advice. She was elegant in the way old cruelty sometimes is. White hair always set, voice low, eyes pale and assessing. When she visited, she never stayed with us, claiming hotels were more comfortable and less disruptive for Erin, though she disrupted every room she entered. She would stand in doorways and observe before speaking. "The ramp angle is too steep," she said once, though the contractor had measured it precisely. "The boy looks puffy," she said another time, as if Erin were not present. "Daniel, you look great. Melissa must be carrying everything." I laughed weakly because I had learned Evelyn preferred agreement. Erin disliked her with an intensity that embarrassed me then. He would become silent when she arrived, not the withdrawn silence of sadness, but the protective stillness of an animal who knows a predator has entered the clearing. "Do not leave me alone with Grandma," he said once. I told him she loved him in her own way. He looked at me with such disappointment that I still remember the angle of his face. The first time Melissa put something in my coffee, or the first time I noticed something that might have been that, was a winter morning 2 years before Napa. I came into the kitchen earlier than usual and saw her standing at the counter with her back to me. Her shoulders moved quickly, not dramatically, just a small motion of hand to cup. When she heard me, she turned with the spoon already in her fingers and smiled. "You startled me," I apologized. "Apologized? In my own kitchen." She handed me the mug and said, "I added that magnesium powder Dr. Keller recommended for sleep and muscle tension." I had no memory of Dr. Keller recommending magnesium, but I had many gaps then, and Melissa's certainty made my uncertainty feel like decline. I drank it. By mid-morning, I was foggy enough to reread one email 4 times. That afternoon, she found me in my study and suggested I cut back my consulting hours. "You are not as sharp as you think you are right now," she said gently. "There is no shame in admitting age changes things. The horror of manipulation is that it often uses the truth as a carrier. Age does change things. Stress does exhaust. Caregiving does erode memory." By blending poison with plausible explanations, Melissa made suspicion feel like vanity. Erin began training at night during his 12th year. He told me later, piece by piece, never all at once. His first goal was not walking. It was confirming whether his body belonged to him at all. He would wait until Melissa made her final medication check, until the hallway light went dark, until the house settled. Then he would move one toe under the blanket and count. If the toe moved, he recorded it in a notebook hidden inside an old speaker casing. Then ankle flexes, then night tension, then lifting one leg half an inch from the mattress. The first time he pulled himself upright using the bed rail, he blacked out for 3 seconds and woke with his cheek against the mattress edge, terrified he had made noise. The first time he stood, he urinated on himself because his body panicked before his mind could manage it. He cleaned it with tissues, hid the evidence, and cried without sound because calling for help would mean calling the person he suspected. He fell often. Bruises bloomed on his hips, knees, shoulders. Melissa saw one and narrowed her eyes. "Where did that come from?" Erin said he bumped himself transferring from bed to chair. She studied him long enough that he began sweating. After that, he practiced on blankets folded on the floor. He built his evidence system from scraps, old phones, a broken tablet, a cloud account under a fake name inspired by a comic book character, small cameras ordered through gift cards he convinced me to buy for robotics parts. I remember being pleased then, thinking his interest in electronics had returned. I did not know I was funding surveillance against my wife. He learned file compression, audio cleanup, metadata preservation, basic chain of custody principles from forums and public legal resources. He kept pill samples in tiny bags, taped behind a loose baseboard. He recorded dates by hand because digital files could be altered. He took photographs of prescription labels before Melissa peeled them off. He built strength while building a case. His childhood did not vanish in one catastrophe. It was repurposed into an investigation. The morning at the marina was not the end of fear. It was the beginning of fear becoming visible. After the agents left with the evidence, Erin and I remained in the car because we had nowhere else to be and no safe home to return to. The fire feed continued until the battery backup failed. Smoke darkened the screen, then froze, then disappeared into a connection error. I looked at the blank screen and realized everything we owned was either burning, contaminated, or about to become evidence. Aaron stared at his hands. "I forgot my blue notebook," he said. His voice was small for the first time that day. "Which one? The one with the plain designs, not evidence, not medication logs, not recordings. A child's notebook, a thing belonging to the boy under the investigator." "I am sorry," I said. It was not enough, but it was true. He nodded once and turned toward the water. 15 minutes later he said, "I hated that house." Then after another pause, "I still wanted my notebook." That sentence has stayed with me because trauma is rarely clean enough to let you hate without loss. At the field office, the agents offered Aaron a blanket, though he was not cold. He accepted it because someone kind offered, and he seemed unsure how to refuse kindness that was not a trap. They placed us in separate rooms briefly for medical checks, and the moment he left my sight, I felt panic rise so violently I had to sit down. A medic asked if I was dizzy. I said no, then realized I was. My blood pressure was high. My pupils were sluggish. My hands trembled. They drew blood, checked my pulse, asked when I had last eaten. I could not remember. The medic gave me crackers and orange juice. I remember laughing once, a short cracked sound, because after discovering my wife had likely been sedating me for years, I was being treated like a man who had skipped breakfast. The ordinary and the monstrous kept touching edges that day. Melissa tried to call 11 times after our marina conversation. I did not answer. Then came texts. "Daniel, you are confused. Please let me speak to Aaron. You are being manipulated. Whoever you are talking to does not know our family. I am your wife. Do not ruin everything because you are frightened. Your son needs his mother." The agents photographed each message. The last one came at 1:06 p.m. "You have no idea what your little performance will cost him." She meant Aaron. Or maybe she meant herself. That was Melissa's genius. Even threats could be phrased as concern if read by the right stranger. When investigators searched what remained of the house, they found more than ignition devices and accelerant residue. They found a locked fireproof box in Melissa's office, inside a cabinet I had never been allowed to organize because she said my filing style was chaotic. In that box were copies of policies, medical authorizations, forged or manipulated account forms, burner phones, and a small notebook in Evelyn's handwriting containing names, dates, and dollar amounts connected to older fires. Not confessions. People like Evelyn rarely write confessions. They write ledgers. Daniel Reeves appeared there. So did two relatives I had never heard of, and one elderly neighbor who had died in a kitchen accident years before. Next to some names were initials, next to others amounts. The investigators would not tell me everything, but Michael's face when he called told me enough. "This is bigger," he said. "You and Aaron may have interrupted a pattern." Interrupted. That was the word he used. Not discovered, not solved, interrupted. As if we had stepped into machinery that had been running long before us, and would have continued if a 13-year-old boy had not learned to stand in secret. I was allowed to see Melissa once before her plea, not in person, but through a recorded proffer excerpt her attorney released as part of discovery. I watched it alone. She sat at a table in a plain room, hair pulled back, face pale but composed. Her attorney beside her looked exhausted. When asked about Aaron's medication, she did not say she wanted him dead. She said she was maintaining the established care presentation. When asked about my sedation, she said I had become increasingly unstable and needed management. When asked about the planned fire, she said the situation had become financially and emotionally unsustainable. She spoke of murder as if discussing downsizing a department. That was the moment I finally understood that Melissa had not become monstrous under stress. Stress had merely revealed the language of her interior life. People were variables. Illness was opportunity. Care was cover. Love was access. Aaron refused to watch any of it. "I know what she sounds like," he said. "I do not need more." That was wisdom. I watched because part of me still wanted to find the woman I had married. Some flicker of remorse, some fractured maternal grief, some sign that she understood Aaron as a person. There was none. What I found instead was emptiness with good posture. The move south happened after a winter in the waterfront apartment, where rain tapped the windows, and both of us slept badly. Tacoma was not the problem, but every road contained memory. The route to the hospital, the grocery store where Melissa bought organic fruit and sedatives under the same roof, the marina where Aaron first told me the truth, the burned lot where our house had stood, fenced off and flattened, smelling faintly of wet ash long after the debris was gone. We chose the new city because it was warm, anonymous, and near water without being the same water. The house we bought was modest, white siding, blue door, 2 bedrooms, a room Erin turned into a computer workspace, and a kitchen with open shelves because I did not want cabinets full of hidden bottles. The first night there, we ordered pizza and ate on the floor because the furniture had not arrived. Erin spilled soda and froze. I grabbed a towel and said, "It is just soda." He looked at me, and I realized how long it had been since mistakes in a house were allowed to be just mistakes. He laughed then, unexpectedly, and the sound startled us both. Healing did not make Erin soft again. It made him selective. He is friendly, but he studies people. He notices exit. He dislikes closed doors behind him. He keeps his own medication, even antibiotics, in a locked pouch. He does not drink from cups he left unattended in unfamiliar places. At first I worried these habits meant Melissa had won some permanent territory inside him. The therapist said, "Some adaptations become less necessary over time. Do not shame the ones that kept him alive, so we do not force normal. We build it around respect." When he goes to parties, he brings his own water bottle and jokes that he is picky. When friends come over, he relaxes slowly. When adults ask too many questions about his past, he changes the subject with a skill that makes me proud and sad. He has a life, but it has locks. Perhaps mine does too. There are still nights when I wake at 2:00 a.m. convinced I heard the garage door. I walk the house, check locks, look into Erin's room, see him sprawled sideways like teenagers sleep when they trust the bed, and return to my own room ashamed and relieved. Sometimes I dream of the mug shattering, but in the dream I ignore the footsteps. I clean the tile. I drink the coffee. The van stops. Smoke fills the stairs. I wake before the ending and sit upright, tasting bitterness. On those mornings, I make tea instead. The man at my office who told me he felt foggy did review his prescriptions. It turned out his situation was not like mine. His wife was not poisoning him. His doctor had mixed up a dosage after a pharmacy change. He called me later and said, "You probably saved me months of misery." I said I was glad. Then I sat in my car after work and cried, not because the man was safe, but because for once suspicion had led to a simple fix instead of a burning house. I want a world where most fears are misunderstandings. I no longer live in one without checking. If this story has an ending, it is not the sentencing, not the move, not the first basketball game Erin played where he scored 6 points and pretended not to care while glowing for hours afterward. The ending is smaller and colder. It happened last month. A letter arrived from the Federal Victim Notification System. Melissa had requested that certain personal property seized in the investigation be returned or transferred, including jewelry, retreat deposits, and a family photo album recovered from storage. The form asked whether I objected. I sat at the kitchen table and looked at the words family photo album. Somewhere in a box were images of birthdays, school projects, hospital smiles, Melissa holding Erin's shoulder for cameras, me standing beside her unaware. Evidence of a life that looked loving if you did not know where to look. Erin came downstairs, saw the letter, and asked what it was. I told him. He read the form. Then he said, "Let it go." The photos, I asked. The version of us in them, he said. I signed the objection only to the items tied to financial restitution, and checked the box declining personal return. I did not request the album, neither did he. Some memories are not worth recovering when the frame itself was part of the crime. That night after he went upstairs, I stood at the sink with a mug of coffee I had made myself, though it was late and I knew it would keep me awake. Steam rose in slow lines, catching the kitchen light. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet. For a moment I saw 2 mornings at once. Tacoma, grey light, Melissa's SUV leaving, the mug breaking, Erin at the stairs. And this one, warm air through an open window, my son alive upstairs, the cup steady in my hands. I realized then that survival had not given us back innocence. It had given us accuracy. We know now that love without scrutiny can become a hiding place for harm. We know that calm voices can lie. We know that a mother can be a predator, a wife can be an architect, and a child can become the only adult in a house because the adults surrendered their eyes. That knowledge does not make life better. It makes it less vulnerable to certain kinds of illusion. Maybe that is the closest we get. I poured half the coffee into the sink and drank the rest. It tasted ordinary, slightly bitter because coffee is sometimes bitter, and not every bitterness is poison. That distinction still matters to me. I rinsed the mug, placed it in the rack, turned off the kitchen light, and stood in the dark long enough to hear Aaron's footsteps cross the floor above me. Steady, unhurried, alive. The sound moved from his desk to the bathroom and back. I did not call up to him. I did not ask if he was okay. I simply listened. Then I went to bed knowing that the most devastating thing about what happened is also the thing that saved us. I will never again mistake silence for peace, care for love, or control for devotion. And my son, who should have learned trust first and caution later, learned them in reverse. He survives. I survive. The world calls that enough because the world prefers stories that end once bodies are safe. But safety is not the same as wholeness. We live, yes. We laugh sometimes. We make plans. We drink coffee. We walk by the water. Yet somewhere inside every quiet morning is the echo of a boy descending the stairs with a secret heavy enough to crush a childhood, asking his father to trust him before the house burned. I did. That is the part I hold. That is the part that remains. Not comfort, not closure, just the sound of footsteps and the terrible mercy of having heard them in time.